This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. I'll be joined by Arko again, and today we're going to talk about tariffs and the economy, how it's going to affect the industry, or what we predict is going to happen with tariffs that are going to hit the market. And we're going to talk overall about economic conditions and ways you can shore up your pool business so that you can be prepared for all economic situations out there. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. I hate to reference COVID, but it comes up all the time, especially when I'm traveling and I'm talking to people. And, in the hospitality industry, they just barely are recovering last year from all the COVID shutdowns. Now, the pool industry was affected in a way that was traumatic for the pool pros, and that's the inflation that we had to go through when we had all those years of no inflation. It was flat in the industry forever. But now we have a new thing on the horizon, and whether they go through or not, the fear of it or, actually it happening, it's hard to say what's going to happen. But the tariffs are something that everyone talks about. I think it's definitely going to affect the industry, but of course you have your head to the rails a little closer working at HASA. What are your thoughts on the tariffs?
I was talking with someone else about this too, and it's first of all, I'll make the statement: I'm not an economist, nor am I an accountant. I'm not somebody that can predict, the economic future off of anything that's going on. I try and understand things. I try and see things where they're at. Definitely what I see with the tariffs, at least short term, which we've already seen happening, an increase of the hard goods, anything that's going to have any kind of steel, that kind of stuff, and all of that we've already seen those price increase letters have been going out, and that, so we felt that effect already. You kind of hear the thing where this is going to be short term, and then it's going to, flatten out over time, let the system work and all that, and again, I don't know about all those things because I'm not an expert in that. I will say from the chemical standpoint, and at least from the HASA standpoint and having to do with liquid, the good news, I guess, about HASA liquid chlorine is that we are not really reliant on the manufacturer of the pure product on tariffs necessarily. We, it's basically salt, and we have salt here. It's water. We have water here. It's the manufacturing, it's electrolysis, and so forth. And so we aren't necessarily affected at that point. But where the problem is that we have to put that material into packaging. And so that's plastics and different things like that, where we are reliant on other materials. Also, we're reliant on energy and the cost of energy. And that's what hit us very hard, very, very hard, right after the pandemic. And when we got into the whole shortage, to where there was a shortage of containers Remember that?
Mhm.
There was a shortage of labor because of the pandemic. And so they didn't have people to drive trucks. They didn't, we had a case because we were having a hard time. There was a shortage on acid from one of our facilities. And the main reason we had that shortage and that delay was the fact that we're reliant on rail cars bringing in the acid that we bottle at one of our facilities. Well, because of COVID and because of the loss of labor, the railroad didn't have somebody who could pull the switch so the cars could come to our facility. We had to wait something like 4 weeks before they had somebody who was qualified to just pull the switch so we could get our rail cars. So there's things like that that go on behind the scenes that you don't realize. And that obviously increases cost overall. And, I don't know how it's going to play out completely on these tariffs. But I will say this. I've been in this industry 45 years. And I've been through I would say within that time, every kind of economic. I went through the Carter years, which were really high inflation, terrible years. I went through the 80s and Reaganomics and all of that. I went through the 90s with the things with Clinton and with free trade, all those things. And I've been through a lot of the economic ups and downs, the worries, the fears. And the one thing I know about this industry is this is a very resilient industry. And if you position yourself, and I'm talking from the service standpoint, I'm talking from the standpoint of a pool service company, service is always going to be needed by someone. And if you position yourself as a professional, you get out there and you hustle and you work and you do what you need to do, you're always going to make it. I've always made it. I know you've made it through 30 plus years. And so we have that. And even with the pandemic, I can remember being at the Western Pool and Spa Show on the day the pandemic hit the nation. And it was the first day of the Pool and Spa Show at the Western in Long Beach. And I was in the middle of teaching a class, and a worker from the Western Show walked into the middle of my class and said, everyone needs to leave now because the health department has closed down this show due to the pandemic. And I saw Long Beach turn into a ghost town within hours. And then this whole thing hit. And I can remember thinking, what's going to happen? What is this going to do? But it actually turned out being better in a lot of ways for the pool service techs and industries. When we became, what was it, the term that they used? We were approved. We were essential workers, and we became essential workers. And then look what everybody did. You had all these people that went inward because they couldn't go outward. And all of a sudden builders, they're 2 years out on building pools. So it was kind of a boom for our industry, despite the inflation. But we certainly had a lot of business to make up for it.
And I think it unlocked a few positive things, like you mentioned. One was the pool pro can raise their rates finally and not get a lot of pushback.
Sure.
That was huge for the industry. And I think the other thing that it really opened up was the fact that we see things differently now in the industry. Because I think with that flat inflation all those years, we were kind of wasteful. I mean, I fell into that category. The pool needs chlorine. I'll just pour in a couple gallons of liquid. It's super cheap. Throwing a bag of Cal Hypo was like $1.50 for a pound of Cal Hypo. And there was a lot of waste going on and a lot of lazy pool maintenance, in my opinion. Now we're really fine-tuned in a professional industry where we have really standards that we look up to. And that's really helped the industry. I think that's the positive I see of it.
No, absolutely agree. I think what it did overall was it brought our industry to a whole different level of professionalism. And I teach commercial pool operator classes, CPO classes. And when we, and I think you've gone through CPO. And of course, in the beginning of a CPO course, one of the things they bring out is the primary purpose of you becoming a CPO is because you're responsible for human health. And that's primarily what you are. If you're taking care of a swimming pool, the primary responsibility you have is for the health of those users, realizing that people are going to get in those pools, and that if that pool is not maintained properly by you, the professional, it could affect, people can get sick, people can get ill, God forbid, people could even possibly maybe die. And that's a huge responsibility. And so I think also what that showed when we became essential workers, and we were deemed essential workers because we were related to human health, is I think that brought a whole lot more importance to the industry and to guys, gals as individuals, that, hey, I have a very important job here. I'm not just some dumb pool guy or pool boy like they show in the movies or whatever. No, this is a serious thing, and I have a serious responsibility, and it's the health of people and children and older folks who use that pool. And I think that caused the whole education, I think a whole new renaissance of education in the pool industry as well as a result of that.
And I also think one thing that it helped with is that since the prices of everything skyrocketed, the homeowners threw up their hands and like, I went to the pool store, I spent $600 and I have chemicals for a month. I'm just going to hire somebody to take care of my pool. And I think that was a side effect of that. And maybe the tariffs, since we are already in this kind of inflationary era of pool service, it's not going to really affect us as much as people think.
I always say, living in this world, and there's so many things beyond our control. And these are the things, I don't know about you, but I've never been able to control inflation or what my government's going to do, this way or that or whatever. It's like I can't go in and stop it, or, it's going to happen. There are things in this world that are beyond our control. And I always say that the way to get through it is to control yourself. It's what can you do for yourself? What can you do to make yourself better? What can you do to make the lives of others better under these circumstances? And I think if you have an attitude, and if you position your business to be one where you're going to serve and help others, despite prices, despite anything else, you'll always come out landing on your feet.
The question I get asked often is, and this is maybe from new guys coming in, or even some veterans, are like, when are the prices gonna drop back down? Like, we saw that inflation, and they're always thinking supply and demand. They're the economic person, and like, our price is gonna drop if things slow down. And I just was at Chick-fil-A last weekend, and it was just me, my wife, and my son. Now, granted, my son's a teenager. He's like, for two people, it was $52 for the Chick-fil-A. I was like,
that never stops, by the way, David.
Yeah.
I have a 30-year-old son now. We take him out to dinner now and then, and I'm like, he's ordering all the extras and everything. I'm like, my goodness, I get it.
The prices, I always tell the guys there's other factors. There's cost of fuel, cost of labor. Of course, in California, the minimum wage is, I don't know what it is now, $20 an hour or something.
Right.
So those are things that you can't control. But, there always are these people that are thinking on the horizon, tablets are going to drop back down to $98, and liquid chlorine a case is going to be $12 again.
I don't think in all the time I've lived that I've ever seen prices go backwards too much, with the exception of, I guess, if if you have a clearance sale or something like that. I'm always looking at the clearance rack when I go somewhere or wherever. And I'm sure that maybe that can be done in the pool industry in some way, but typically I think that's false hope to think that, prices are going to go back to where they were in, 1999 or whatever. I don't think it'll happen. I think you'll see maybe pricing will flatten out some. But I wouldn't have my hopes up that things are going to go back to the way they were in the good old days or something like that. I don't see that ever happening.
And I think people charge what they do, it's not they're making these enormous profits in most industries. I think a lot of it, if you're in business long enough and like myself and do various things, you know that people charge because they have to charge that. I mean, my HVAC guy, he did some work for me and it was like $500 for it. And I questioned him. I rarely question him, but this one I did. And he's like, he goes, Dave, you know, you're a businessman. You know that I charge what I charge to stay in business. And that's basically why I charge you that. And,
Yes.
you know, that was a really good statement. And I take that to heart. He charges what he charges to stay in business. And I
Yes.
think that's true across the board for manufacturers, suppliers, and for the pool pro when they talk to their customer. They should have that attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was even thinking about this, and I don't know if it was your podcast I was listening to or somebody I was listening to somebody about, and they were talking about test kits and testing different test kits and the cost
Mhm.
of like for a spin touch, and then the disc that you use, and then the different strips and things you have to use, and the cost of those, and the cost of different reagents, and even that, and I even think about something like that, where I think, okay, is somebody putting that into their what they're charging the customer, or is that actually, in a sense, wasted income, or where they're paying for something that they're not getting any money back on. And these are things I don't know if pros think about all these things, all these costs, like even reagents replaced. So if you were maybe to take one pool and say, what did I spend in reagents this month at that pool, and then figure it out for the year, how much is that? And then are you charging your customer for that? Are you getting that back? Or is that, like I said, is that just wasted? And it's things like that. That sounds like a little thing, but those are the things where if you're not watching, that can cause financial situations.
Exactly. And I always tell the guys, you know, every little thing counts. Not that you're going to nickel and dime your customers, but if you forget to charge for a pump basket, then this is something that's reoccurring every month. I mean, that's a couple $100 a year that you're losing over the course of 10 years. That's $2,000. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if you multiply that by other factors, like you mentioned, the spin touch disc, $3 a disc, and that's $15 a month at a pool or $20 a month, and you're only charging 150, you're losing money because you're using the spin touch on that pool. I mean, it's logical, but a lot of people don't break it down per pool, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's just important, as you said, and it's to stay in business, and you have to ensure that you're recovering your cost
Mhm.
on everything that you're doing.
Yeah, and I'll end with this, but Chick-fil-A, they do a great job because they have like 50 employees there every time you go in there. It's so fast, you get in and out. And so I
Yeah,
can see their business model, and it's expensive, and you pay for that. You pay for that
yeah. I think
convenience.
the place where I really noticed it was another. Since we're talking fast food places, Jimmy John's. If you've ever
Uh-huh.
gone to a Jimmy John's, and I can remember, I think one time going in there, and I mean, I barely got the order of the sandwich out of my mouth, and they were handing it to me. I hardly turned around from paying, and there it is.
Yeah.
And I guess what they call that freaky fast. They say
Mhm.
they're freaky fast.
Well, you pay for that, I guess.
You do pay for that,
Yeah.
obviously.
And you pay for
But
good pool service too.
right, and I think this is the other thing I'll say. I think people are willing to pay for. We did a HASA. We did a survey several years ago, 5 years ago or so. We did a survey of pool owners who had service. They had pools on service. They had service techs, and we surveyed them about, I think it was 10 different things that they were the most concerned about, having to do with their pools and how their pools were serviced. And do you want to know what the number one thing that they were concerned about was? Now, you might erroneously, well,
Mhm.
I'm going to ask you, what do you think was the number one thing they were concerned about in having a service pro?
Well, I think the number one thing, well, in my opinion, people complain about is the algae in the pool, and the water quality is what I get a lot when I'm out there.
So you are very close there. Their number one concern was their number one concern in what we've just been talking about had to do with their health.
Mm-hmm.
They were concerned about and primarily it was families. They were concerned about the health of their kids to swim in that pool.
Mm-hmm.
Safety and health was the number one concern that people had. It was not price. And in fact, price was number 4 on the list of what they were concerned about. The takeaway from that is we need to, kind of, sometimes we worry so much about if we have to raise our price or whatever, but maybe to understand that if you're doing a good job, if you're a professional, if you're keeping that pool up and your customers are satisfied, their number one concern is not price. And again, as you said, we don't want to nickel and dime people or make the impression you're nickel and diming them. But you also need to understand that if you are doing your due diligence, you're worth your efforts in what you're doing. And cost of living is going up. You need to pay yourself. And the way you pay yourself is you need to charge accordingly and raise your prices if needed. And I think customers overall understand that if they're getting a quality product.
Good point. Good point. Well, thanks again, Terry, for this. It's always a pleasure to do these with you.
It's awesome. Thanks. I appreciate it so much, David.
And if you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those by subscribing to my YouTube channel where I post these Monday through Friday. You can also find them on my website, swimmingprolearning.com. There's a podcast icon on the banner. Click on that, and there'll be a drop-down menu of over 1,650 podcasts for you there. And if you're interested in a coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.